found out, kind of more recently, that Malcolm and Vivian hadn't had that shop that long, maybe a year.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what to do with it.
So it was a teddy shop before, or he turned it into a teddy shop?
He turned it into a teddy boy shop, I think. I think it'd been on to Tommy Roberts before, it'd be called Paradise Garage. He just gave him the keys. He didn't know what to do, but he had a shop, so he started having a few things that he could sell, and it attracted, maybe at the time, you know, when everybody was wearing flares and had long hair and greatcoats, the teddy boys who were like an alternative culture. Yeah, I was into rock and roll music, as opposed to kind of aggressive stuff.
But the other shop, Gray Takes a Trip,
there
was kind of the same fashion, or more than like
no, that was totally different. Granny Takes a Trip was where people like the Rolling Stones, and maybe the Beatles, and not hippie, more kind of sort of dandy, you know, like Brian Jones.
Yes, psychedelic.
Yeah, psychedelic kind of flamboyant, dandy fashion. There's a song by Mark Bolan, Dandy in the Underworld, and sort of like a bit kind of Oscar Wildean kind of thing, sort of.
So this shop, Malcolm's shop, and then there was, is that Acme Attraction? Is that another?
Well, Acme Attractions came later.
Yeah, so you have 3 shops on one road.
Yeah.
3 fashion
They were kind of spread out. There was Malcolm's, there was Granny Takes a Trip, 1 block away. Acme Attractions was halfway down the King's Road and the other way. And then what started to happen was that people would go down on a Saturday afternoon and walk between Acme and Acme became Boy. And then what people don't really realise as well, back then in England, the pubs used to shut on a Saturday afternoon. So people had been down the King's Road, had a drink in one, 3:30,
quick.
you had to get out, and there was 2 hours, 2.5 hours before the pub opened again, and that was when all the trade came in. And that's when people like Susie and so we met John through that, would be down.
So that is the very early people who came there, Susie or Marco, I guess, Marco Peroni.
Yeah, they kind of sort of turned up a little bit later on, I think. But all the way through this, and this is kind of going on over maybe a year or more, I was just kind of enjoying working there, and these weird people were coming in, and that's where I met Steve and Paul. So also, you mentioned art school. I applied to go to art college.
Right.
And I wanted to go to art college because I'd read that all my favourite bands, the Kinks and the Who,
The Stones,
the Stones, and Small Faces, had all been to art college.
yeah.
And art college in England at the time, it wasn't so much that you learned to become an artist and got a degree, which you can do now. It was a bit of thinking space, and you used to be able to get a grant. So it was a fantastic place to kind of have a bit of time to think, practice your instrument a little bit, and meet like-minded people, and it was an exchange of ideas. And that's why I wanted to go. Now, I used to kind of get on with Malcolm a bit, and Vivian was starting off her trade, and I think she was trying to process what she actually wanted to do and started making clothes. So much so that she was doing these, and they'd done some things for the Rocky Horror Show, which was also on, not as a movie, but it was in a theatre, in the King's Road Theatre halfway down, and they made some clothes for that. And they'd made T-shirts with slogans on with chicken bones. But they'd only made a few. And Vivian said to us one day with me and Elaine, she said, "You going to the chicken and the chips place over the road for lunch?" And we said, "Might do, why?" "Well, keep the bones because they're good for the T-shirt." So we did, we used to smell the chicken and chips out the back of all these throwing away things. But around about that time, I was applying to go to art college, and I needed a reference, to somebody to give you that you're not a nitwit, So I asked Vivian, I said, "Do you think Malcolm would sign my reference to St Martin's Art College?" She said, "What's the reference for?" I said, "To go to art college." And she said, "Well, he might do, but I don't think you really want to ask him." And I said, "Well, why not?" She said, "Well, he's been thrown out of every art college in London." So I took more interest in Malcolm, and because I was applying to art college, he seemed to take a bit more interest in me. We had kind of quite a good rapport from And around about that time is when people like Steve and Paul would come in. But they would come in and they had a couple of other mates who were kind of a bit ne'er-do-wells.
But before that, you think who ended up with the shop, Malcolm or Vivian? Or they both? They both rented the shop, and who was more like?
Well, I think Malcolm had the keys because he was friends with Tommy Roberts.
Oh, right. Then they started like doing something like this.
Well, they were, you know, they were boyfriend and girlfriend at
Yes.
that time.
And who was more like the businessman? Is that always Malcolm or is that Vivian?
I think it was more Vivian.
Vivian.
Neither.
Yeah, neither really, yeah. They used to have it, but only done it by the seat of their pants, you know.
And John was already there?
No, this was before
John. Yes.
Glent. So it was still, when I was there, it was a teddy bear shop.
Yes.
Initially. And then Malcolm kind of got a bit, and it was very busy, he would do really good business. Especially on a Saturday, all the teddy boys would come in, you know, and get proper creepers, and there would be a delivery on a Friday night, and there'd be a queue down the block for people to get the shoes, and they would be sold out.
All right.